Welcome, dearly beloved chosen ones. Before we begin, I want to take a sacred moment to say thank you. Thank you to every soul who has supported this channel and this mission through super thanks. Whether you gave a little or a lot, whether you give every time or not, at all, your presence, your energy, and your support are all deeply appreciated. This message, this movement, wouldn't be possible without you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for keeping this light burning in a world that desperately needs it. Now, if you're hearing this right now, it's not by accident. You were drawn here because something in your spirit already knows. Karma has not forgotten you. And if you feel this message is confirmation, if your soul is nodding as you hear these words, drop 777 in the comments. Let the algorithm see your light. Let heaven see your agreement. That number is a sign of divine completion, and right now the final chapter in this particular battle is being written by justice itself. Because make no mistake, chosen one, the universe keeps receipts. The Most High has been silently watching, even when you felt unseen, and some people truly believed they got away with it. They lied on your name, misrepresented your heart, laughed at your wounds, and celebrated what they thought was your downfall. They clinked glasses behind closed doors, convinced they had silenced you, that your stillness was surrender, that their manipulation would go unchecked. They assumed karma was either asleep or uninterested. But what they didn't know is that karma doesn't miss, it doesn't forget. It just waits, and when it moves with force. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't whisper. It crashes through illusions, shatters masks, and floods every lie with radiant truth. You see, karma doesn't just correct the wrong, it exposes the intent. It peels back the facade and shows the world who people really are when they thought no one was watching. What they thought was hidden is about to be spotlighted, not as punishment, but as balance. Here's something most people don't talk about. Studies in behavioral psychology reveal that manipulators often believe their own lies. They thrive in silence because they equate your lack of reaction with defeat. But silence, for the chosen ones, isn't weakness. It's wisdom. You weren't quiet because you were broken. You were quiet because you were being built. What they never realized is that you weren't just some underdog. You were the storm that was forming in the background. You were the prophecy waiting for the proper hour. And now karma is pulling up a front row seat. Not with judgment, but with justice. It's holding the mic, it's rolling the footage, and it's about to replay everything they thought would stay buried. Chosen one, this next season, it will not be subtle, and it definitely won't be private. The same ones who tried to bury you will have no choice but to watch you bloom and choke on the very petals they swore would never sprout. Because the God who allowed you to be broken in silence is the same God now preparing to elevate you in public. So, get ready. This isn't just your comeback, it's karma's masterpiece. And you are the headline. Let's talk about it. God's chosen ones. Karma is about to embarrass your enemies in front of everyone. Number 1, they mocked the seed because they couldn't recognize the forest it was becoming. Chosen one, let's tell the truth. They laughed too early. They mocked the seed while it was still buried, mistaking your silence for surrender, your delay for defeat, and your humility for insignificance. They saw you at your lowest in the seasons where nothing looked like glory and thought that was your final form. But let me ask you this. Since when did the beginning of a miracle look like the end of a story? Can a seed sprout before it's covered in soil? They saw dirt, but heaven saw destiny. You were never buried, you were planted. What they misjudged as failure was actually foundation. While they were watching your stillness, your soul was stretching roots beneath the surface. They didn't see the depth being formed. They didn't hear your silent prayers, feel the weight of your unseen battles, or witness your private victories over depression, betrayal, and self-doubt. All they saw was the pause, not the preparation. But God saw it all, and He wasn't silent because He forgot you. He was silent because He was building something in you that required secrecy. Look at David, mocked as just a shepherd boy, even by his own family. But while he was in the fields, God was preparing a king. 1 Samuel 16:11-13. Or consider Tyler Perry, once laughed at. While living out of his car, his stage plays barely attended. Yet beneath that dirt was a forest of vision, and now the world walks through what he built. Or Bethany Hamilton, the surfer who lost her arm to a shark attack, written off too soon, only to return with more strength and faith than ever. These stories reflect your own. They thought it was over, but you were just beginning. Isaiah 61:3 says God gives you beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning. What they called ashes, God is turning into architecture. Now ask yourself, how many people mistook your quiet stage for your finished product? How many people gave commentary on your process while having no clue what God was cultivating inside you? Here's the twist. Karma doesn't just repay, it broadcasts. It shows the same audience who gossiped about your failure just how wrong they were. Now, as you rise into visibility, they must walk through the forest that grew from the very seed they mocked. They must admit that they didn't just get it wrong. They underestimated someone God personally appointed. Romans 8:18 reminds you, the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. This is your unveiling season, the moment where what was once invisible becomes undeniable. And the best part? You won't have to lift a finger. Your growth will speak for you. Your silence, once mocked, will become your strongest sermon. So, chosen one, are you ready to see them choke on their certainty? Are you prepared to walk boldly through the forest they never believed would grow? Number 2, your scars became sacred blueprints they were never meant to understand. Chosen one, they thought your wounds would ruin you. They thought the betrayals, the breakdowns, the backstabs would silence your spirit. But what they didn't know is that you weren't just bleeding, you were blueprinting. Your scars, those sacred etchings of endurance, didn't make you bitter. They made you better. And here's the truth they missed. Survival isn't a sign of weakness, it's a mark of wisdom. Let me ask you, how many times did you want to give up but didn't? How many silent nights did you stitch your soul back together without applause? That's what they never saw. They saw you walk into rooms with grace, but didn't know what it cost to get there. They saw your calm, but not your climb. But guess what? Scars are proof that you fought battles and survived. They are sacred ink on the pages of your divine assignment. Galatians 6:17 says, I bear on my body the marks of Jesus. These marks are not shame, they are sacred. Like Harriet Tubman, who bore not only physical scars, but mental ones from the weight of leading hundreds to freedom, your scars are not just yours. They're the legacy of your courage. Or Malala Yousafzai, whose near-death experience became a global mission for education. Or Michael Jordan, whose early failures and rejections fueled a fire that built an empire. Or Tina Turner, who survived years of abuse and emerged with power, dignity, and a voice that healed millions. The scars they left on you now lead others out of pain. Your insight is deeper, your discernment is stronger, your boundaries are firmer. Why? Because pain taught you. Psalm 34:18 tells us, The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. God was shaping you with every heartbreak. He wasn't punishing you, He was preparing you. They never thought the version of you they were wounding would one day walk past them in peace and power. That's the karma. They expected you to come undone, but you came alive. They thought they were breaking you, but they were just breaking the mold. You don't trust easily now, and that's not coldness, that's clarity. You don't engage in every argument, and that's not weakness, that's wisdom. Proverbs 4:7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Your scars gave you both. They made you anointed, aware, and aligned." So here's the real question. Chosen one. What will they do now that the person they tried to destroy has become a walking testament to divine endurance? What will they say when they realize the pain they caused didn't cripple you? It crowned you? The very people who mocked your cracks are about to watch you build with the very pieces they shattered, and they won't be able to deny it. Why? Because the evidence is in your elevation. Number 3, they weren't your enemies. They were your unintentional trainers in disguise. Chosen one, it's time to shift your perspective. What if I told you they were never truly your enemies? What if they were your unpaid mentors, unknowingly sharpening the weapon they tried to dull? Think about it. Every betrayal, every backhanded insult, every manipulative tactic they used was actually a free lesson in spiritual warfare. They didn't just try to hurt you, they ended up teaching you, not because they cared about your growth, but because they underestimated your ability to transform pain into power. Now, ask yourself this: who taught you the most about strength? Your friends or your adversaries? They assumed their schemes would break your spirit, that you'd retaliate with the same pettiness. But instead of reacting, you studied them. You observed their patterns. You noticed how quickly loyalty disappeared when conditions weren't in their favor. You witnessed how fake compassion collapsed under pressure. And while they thought you were silent because you were weak, you were actually analyzing. They handed you a map, one built on their own dysfunction, and you followed it, not to destruction, but to discernment. Take a look at Joseph in Genesis 50:20. His brothers betrayed him, sold him, and left him for dead. Yet he told them later, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Sound familiar? Like Joseph, your enemies didn't realize their evil actions were feeding your elevation. Or think of Oprah Winfrey, fired from her first television job and told she wasn't fit for TV. That rejection didn't stop her, it trained her. Or Steve Jobs, ousted from the company he founded, only to return stronger and lead Apple to historic success. Or even Chadwick Boseman, quietly battling illness while continuing to produce work that would change the world. These individuals weren't crushed by adversity, they were refined by it. James 1:2-4 teaches, "Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." You weren't just tested, you were taught. You didn't just get through it, you mastered it. And now those lessons have become part of your operating system. You know who to trust. You've learned to identify energy that shifts in disguise. You can now move with silent strategy, no longer needing closure or explanations. Here's the ironic twist. Their goal was to become the villain in your story, but what they didn't expect was that God would repurpose their evil into education. They were the push that deepened your spiritual maturity. They don't deserve applause, but they'll be referenced because pressure made you powerful, fire made you focused, and their betrayal unlocked a level of purpose you never would have touched in comfort. Romans 5:3-4 declares, "We glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope." This isn't just survival. This is spiritual alchemy, turning emotional injury into kingdom strategy. So now, chosen one, let me ask you, do you realize how lethal you've become in silence? Do you see how much they built you up while trying to break you down? Now, karma is stepping forward. And those who once conspired against you are about to discover they were merely the training ground for your triumph. They weren't your downfall, they were your development. And the version of you they tried to crush is now the version they're least prepared to handle. Number 4. The very mouths that lied will be forced to narrate your rise. Chosen one, here's one of the most divine ironies of your journey. The same mouths that once whispered lies behind your back will soon speak your name with awe and reluctance in public. Not because you begged for validation, not because you sought their approval, but because karma has a poetic sense of justice, and it always delivers with style. Have you noticed how truth has a way of returning like a lion, even after being silenced for a season? These people didn't just lie about you. They launched a full identity theft, twisting your actions, exaggerating your flaws, adding unnecessary drama to shape narratives that never belonged to you. And what did you do? You stayed grounded. You didn't go online to defend every rumor. You didn't expose screenshots or clap back in comments. You chose silence, and that silence, chosen one, became your armor. Because while they were sowing lies, the truth was quietly growing its roots. Look at what happened to Nelson Mandela, labeled a terrorist, imprisoned for decades. But in time, the same world that condemned him turned to him for leadership and healing. Or think of Britney Spears, publicly ridiculed and humiliated, only for the world to later awaken and recognize the injustice she faced. Consider Jesus in Luke 23:34, crucified while mocked by the same people he came to save. Yet 3 days later, resurrection silenced every accuser. And Maya Angelou, whose early trauma and silencing only deepened the power of her poetic voice heard across generations. Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn." Karma doesn't just silence the tongue, it repurposes it. That's the beauty of divine justice. Now the very people who swore you'd fail are being asked, "Wait, isn't that the one you said would never make it?" And they're choking on their own certainty. Suddenly the narrative has changed. They're being called to publicly acknowledge the private power they tried to erase. And here's the wild part. They have to talk about you now. Their opinions are being requested. People are noticing your glow, your rise, your results. And the ones who once denied you are now being questioned about you. Karma doesn't just let them observe your redemption, it makes them participate in it. Psalm 23:5 reminds you, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." That table, it's public, it's visible, it's unavoidable, and they're being seated not to eat, but to witness. So, chosen one, let me ask you, how do you carry yourself when your former critics are now your reluctant cheerleaders? How do you hold your peace when the liars are forced to become your promoters? The beauty is, you don't have to say a word. You are the word. You are the proof. You are the living contradiction to everything they spoke. And as your elevation continues, their denial will sound more and more foolish. Not because you're shouting louder, but because your presence makes it impossible to ignore the truth. This is not revenge. This is alignment. This is divine correction. And through clenched teeth and forced applause, they will speak your name with respect they never wanted to give. Because, chosen one, when God's favor writes your story, no lie can hold the pen. Number 5, they mistook your delay for denial, but God was calculating a divine entrance. Chosen one, they couldn't see the blueprint, so they assumed there wasn't one. In their limited view, your delay meant defeat. To them, your quiet season was a sign of failure. They thought because you weren't rushing, you were irrelevant. But let me ask you, since when did stillness mean stagnation? Who told them that divine purpose operates on their human clock? What they never understood is that while they were chasing moments, you were being prepared for a movement. They mocked your pause because they couldn't comprehend your preparation, and that's where the misunderstanding began. You weren't being delayed, you were being developed. While they prioritized visibility, you focused on becoming spiritually and emotionally unshakable. Do you know how dangerous it is to underestimate someone who is growing in silence? That was their mistake. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." Not your friend's time, not social media's timeline, God's time. You weren't missing out. You were being meticulously positioned for something so precise that even one premature move would have cost you everything. But you waited, and that patience wasn't passive, it was radical obedience. Think of Colonel Sanders, who didn't franchise KFC until his 60s, or Vera Wang, who became a fashion icon after the age of 40, or even Abraham and Sarah. God didn't give them Isaac until their old age. Genesis 21, verse 2. And let's not forget Jesus, who didn't start his public ministry until the age of 30. Luke 3:23. You're in excellent company, chosen one. Why? Because true impact is never rushed. It's revealed. While they were rushing to get seen, you were being reshaped to carry weight. While they settled for applause, you were being refined for authority. Patience taught you how to be present in the preparation, how to hear God's whisper above the noise, how to resist the temptation to prove your worth prematurely. They saw you standing still and assumed you had lost. But the truth? You were becoming rooted, and roots always come before the rise. Isaiah 40:31 promises, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles." Your delay wasn't a stop sign, it was a launch pad. And now, you're not just rising, you're soaring. And the very ones who questioned your pace are now watching in awe, wondering how someone they counted out became the blueprint for divine acceleration. Let me ask you again, how many people assumed you were behind just because they couldn't see God's calendar? How many laughed when they should have stayed silent? The most beautiful irony. Your rise isn't even for revenge, it's a revelation. It's karma showing up, not to harm them, but to humble them. Because the same people who whispered they missed their moment are now forced to say, they were the moment. You didn't miss out. You were made for right now. Number 6. While they played checkers, you became the chessboard. Chosen one, they underestimated the terrain because they never realized you were the terrain. They thought this was a casual game of quick moves and petty wins. Checkers. But what they didn't understand is that while they were strategizing for shallow victories, you were becoming the structure on which the entire board operates. You weren't playing to win a small fight. You were evolving into the entire battlefield. Let that sink in. You didn't just change the game, you became it. What did they use? Gossip, manipulation, sudden mood shifts. They thought if they moved fast and hit hard enough, they could throw you off course. But here's the truth. While they were zigzagging across the surface, you were sinking deeper into spiritual wisdom, emotional intelligence, and kingdom strategy. You stopped engaging with pawns and started discerning power positions. That's when the game changed. Proverbs 24:6 says, "For by wise counsel you will wage your own war, and in a multitude of counselors there is safety." You weren't reacting anymore. You were refining your counsel, your discernment, your positioning. Instead of falling for traps, you learned how to set the tempo. And once you mastered foresight, the battlefield was no longer theirs. It became yours. Think of Michelle Obama, faced constant attacks but rose with elegance and intelligence that silenced critics. Or look at Sun Tzu, author of The Art of War. a strategist who understood that true power isn't in noise, but in positioning. Or consider Elon Musk, often ridiculed for his unconventional thinking, now commanding industries others can't keep up with. And then there's Queen Esther, who waited patiently, understood the politics of the palace, and saved her people through timing and wisdom. Esther 4:14. These weren't just players, they understood the board. You do too now, don't you? You've outgrown emotional reactivity. You've stopped explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You've started thinking in long-term impact instead of short-term applause. You've moved from checkers to divine chess. 1 Corinthians 2:14 says, "The person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, and cannot understand them because they are discerned only through the Spirit." That's why they couldn't comprehend your moves. You weren't just growing, you were ascending, and they didn't have the vision to interpret it. Let me ask you, how do you respond when the people who once pulled petty stunts now realize you've outmaneuvered them completely? Do you clap back, or do you smile in quiet knowing you've reached a place where their antics look childish, their schemes transparent, their intentions too small for the stage you now command? Now karma is placing the spotlight. Their old tactics, powerless. Their manipulations, outdated, because when someone plays checkers and you're the chessboard, they can't win. Not because you beat them, but because they were never playing on your level to begin with. You don't need revenge. You've already won. You're no longer just a piece on the board. You're the one shaping every move without needing to announce it. And every time they try to pull you back into their game, karma reminds them you're not in it anymore. Number 7. The same hands that tried to bury you are now digging their own graves. Chosen one, don't ever forget this. When you are aligned with divine truth, even the dirtiest plots against you become fertilizer for your breakthrough. The very hands that tried to cover you in shame are now being forced to uncover their own disgrace. What they did in secret is being shouted from rooftops, and not because you exposed them, but because truth has its own gravitational pull. And truth, once it starts rising, brings everything with it. So, let me ask you, did they really think they could keep digging graves without falling into one? They thought they were being strategic, operating behind the scenes, whispering half-truths, hiding behind fake concern and crocodile tears. But spiritual law is not fooled by human cleverness. Galatians 6:7 reminds us, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows." And they sowed recklessly, repeatedly, with intention. While you were healing, they were harming. While you were trying to find peace, they were stirring chaos. But every dig, every deception, every calculated attempt to stain your name was planting a seed of their own downfall. Take a look at real-life figures like Elizabeth Holmes. Her polished persona covered deception for years until the fraud unraveled in public. Or Harvey Weinstein, whose manipulation and power plays were exposed in the most public way possible. Or Judas, who betrayed Jesus for silver, only to return the coins and take his own life. Matthew 27:5. Or Lance Armstrong, once revered, until the truth about doping left his entire legacy in ruins. They all thought they could operate in the dark forever, but karma always flips the light switch. And here's what's even more powerful. Chosen one, you didn't retaliate, you didn't need to. Romans 12:19 says, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." And now God is doing what only He can, balancing the scales in front of everyone. The same people who set the trap are now caught in it. The dirt they threw didn't just miss you, it's now sticking to them. While they were digging for your burial, they forgot one critical detail. You're not ordinary. You're covered. You're called. You were never the target. They were digging their own lesson. And the most poetic part of it all, it's happening in public. Their masks are slipping in front of the same crowd they tried to poison against you. Luke 12:2-3 declares, "There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight." That's what's unfolding right now. Not revenge, revelation. So, chosen one, how does it feel to know that your silence spoke louder than their schemes? That your grace became their mirror? That their obsession with your downfall is now the very trap they can't escape? Because they didn't just bury the wrong person, they buried themselves in the process. And karma isn't just correcting the record, it's rewriting the entire script. And this is just the opening scene. Number 8. You were the storm they tried to outrun. Chosen one, you weren't just the quiet one in the room. You were the storm gathering in stillness. And they didn't see it. They thought you were soft, easy to manipulate, passive, dismissible. But storms don't announce themselves to those who mock the thunder. They just arrive, and you did, in full force. You weren't born to be the victim of their narrative. You were born to redefine the atmosphere. They tried to control how others saw you, twisting your story, distorting your heart, laughing behind screens and closed doors. They projected weakness onto you, thinking they could speak over your power. But let me ask you, how long can someone play God before they get struck by what they tried to manipulate? Isaiah 29:15 warns, "Woe to those who go to great depths to hide their plans from the Lord, who do their work in darkness and think, 'Who sees us? Who will know?'" They thought their whisper campaigns and character assassinations would go unnoticed. They thought accountability could be dodged forever. But you weren't standing still. You were charging up. While they were orchestrating drama, you were undergoing transformation. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. Your quiet wasn't surrender. It was evolution. You weren't just rising. You were becoming a spiritual force. And now, that storm they mocked, it has a name, and it's yours. Look at Serena Williams, constantly targeted by critics for her strength and style, only to become one of the greatest athletes of all time. Or Martin Luther King Jr., slandered and surveilled by authorities, but whose truth shook a nation. Or Greta Thunberg, a young girl mocked for her passion, yet who became a voice heard globally. And of course, look to Job, slandered, stripped and tested, yet God restored him with double. Job 42:10. Psalm 18:14 says, "He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. With great bolts of lightning he routed them." That's what your presence is now. Arrows, lightning, disruption. Every room you enter exposes falsehoods. Every victory you walk into challenges the narrative they tried to write. They didn't expect to see you stronger, louder, radiating divine justice from the inside out. And now, the thunder is your voice. The lightning is your clarity. And the rain, that's the downpour of divine correction washing away the lies they built their identities on. They didn't see the storm coming because they never believed you had that kind of power. But now they know. Now the echoes of your truth are bouncing off every wall they tried to close in around you. So let me ask you, what do you do when the very people who dismissed you are now scrambling to shield themselves from the consequences of their own storms? Do you chase them down? Number, you rise, you continue, you let karma conduct the weather report, because you weren't sent to destroy them. You were sent to reveal them. You were the storm all along, and they were never ready. Number 9, they fed on false narratives. Now they're choking on undeniable truth. Chosen one, some people didn't just lie about you. They lived off those lies. They built entire realities around distorted perceptions, creating versions of you so far from the truth that they fooled even themselves. But ask yourself, how long can someone feast on fiction before choking on the truth? They didn't just gossip, they orchestrated stories. They repeated them, dressed them in emotion, and paraded them through conversations you were never invited to defend yourself in. But truth? Truth has its own metabolism, and right now it's surfacing with a vengeance. These weren't harmless misunderstandings. They were full-blown, fabricated narratives rooted in insecurity, jealousy, and projection. You became their scapegoat because your very existence challenged their illusions. Psalm 52:2 says, "Your tongue plots destruction. It is like a sharpened razor, you who practice deceit." They used your name as currency to gain favor, inflate their egos, and center themselves in dramas where you were never even present. And for a while, people bought it, because a lie shouted often enough can temporarily drown out a silent truth. Look at Amanda Knox, whose reputation was nearly destroyed by media-driven assumptions, only to later be fully acquitted. Or Meghan Markle, vilified by tabloids who crafted an image of her as a threat, until the truth about the inner workings of the monarchy began to emerge. Or Brian Banks, a promising athlete wrongly imprisoned because of a false accusation, only to later have the truth surface and his name cleared. Even Jesus Christ himself was falsely accused, tried, and crucified. But the resurrection silenced every accusation, Matthew 28:6. They felt powerful while people believed their version of your story. They surrounded themselves with echo chambers, collecting agreement like armor. But what they didn't count on was time, because time has a strange way of unraveling delusion. Slowly, then all at once. John 8:32 reminds us, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And now, chosen one, the truth is roaring. It's not just correcting the record, it's dismantling every room where your name was used as slander. You didn't have to prove anything. The lie is collapsing under its own weight. And now, they're choking, not on guilt, but on the exposure. The bitterness they stirred now coats their own reputation. The smiles they wore while discrediting you are starting to crack. The people who once co-signed their stories are starting to question the inconsistencies. Why? Because the truth doesn't beg, it invades. Proverbs 19:5 warns, "A false witness will not go unpunished, and whoever pours out lies will not go free." That's not karma for vengeance, that's justice for restoration. And your name? It's being restored, publicly, in spaces where they thought they had the final word. So now, let me ask you, how does it feel to know you never had to scream to be heard? That even when your voice was absent, your truth kept moving forward? They fed off fiction, and now karma's serving them a full course of reality, with no filter, no edit, and no escape. Number 10, they mistook your silence for surrender, but you were preparing for the roar. Chosen one, your silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. It was divine discipline in disguise. But they mistook your stillness as weakness, your quiet as defeat. And in doing so, they revealed their inability to perceive spiritual maturity. Because you weren't absent, you were becoming. You weren't done, you were preparing. While they flailed around seeking attention, clout, and control, you sat in sacred solitude. You healed in shadows. You listened to God instead of reacting to gossip. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. You leveled up. Proverbs 17:27 reminds us, "The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered." That was you. You chose dignity over drama, peace over performance. They assumed because you didn't post screenshots, share receipts, or argue in public that you had no voice. But silence in the hands of the chosen is the loudest language. like Nelson Mandela, who stayed silent during years of imprisonment and came out not vengeful but visionary, or Malala Yousafzai, who quietly rebuilt herself after being shot, then stood before the world with power and purpose, or Prince Harry, who endured tabloid chaos only to exit the system and create his own life on his own terms, or Hannah in 1 Samuel 1, who silently prayed while mocked, only to birth the prophet Samuel, a child of promise. They were performing, you were transforming. They were loud, you were listening. And now the tables have turned. Your quiet growth has erupted into public elevation. Your silence has transformed into resonance, a presence so undeniable it disrupts their illusion without a single word spoken. Ecclesiastes 3:7 says, "There is a time to be silent and a time to speak. Now, it's speaking time, but not in the way they expected. You're not raising your voice. Your results are the opportunities coming your way, the rooms calling your name, the peace you carry, the glow you walk with. Those are your answers. That's your comeback. They wanted you to collapse. Instead, you crystallized. They were waiting for you to fold. Instead, you forged steel, and the version of you that stood quietly through the chaos. That version has evolved into someone they can't reach, can't manipulate, can't label. Isaiah 30:15 declares, "In quietness and trust is your strength." And that strength, it's frightening to those who thought chaos would consume you. Because now, your silence echoes louder than their noise ever did. So, chosen one, ask yourself, was it worth not defending yourself in those old rooms? Was it worth biting your tongue, letting God handle it, and focusing on the long game? Yes, because now the very people who thought they erased you must watch you emerge undeniable. Let them talk. Let them hold on to outdated narratives, because soon those stories will dissolve in the shadow of your breakthrough. And when it comes, it won't need to be introduced. It will arrive like a roar that silences every lie ever spoken. Number 11. They watched you starve. Now they'll be forced to watch you feast. Chosen one, let this settle deep into your spirit. They saw you in your lowest moments and chose to look away. Some even smiled. They weren't unaware of your struggle. They were entertained by it. They saw the hunger, the gaps, the seasons where you had nothing. And instead of stepping in with compassion, they leaned back with judgment. But now the feast is being prepared right in front of them. Not quietly, not behind closed doors. Publicly. God is turning your famine into a festival, and they're all invited to witness it, whether they like it or not. Psalm 23:5 says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." That wasn't metaphorical, it's prophetic. Your table isn't about revenge. It's about visibility. It's about a divine revelation where your provision becomes undeniable to everyone who once whispered, doubted, and withheld. And now the same mouths that mocked your lack must go silent as they witness your overflow. Consider Oprah Winfrey, who wore potato sacks as a child because her family couldn't afford clothes. Now, she feeds millions with her influence and philanthropy. Or Tyler Perry, once homeless, laughed at for his plays. Now the owner of one of the largest film studios in the world. Or Joyce Meyer, sexually abused as a child, dismissed by many, yet now a global spiritual leader feeding souls across nations. Even Joseph in Genesis 41:41, sold into slavery by his own brothers, later welcomed them into a palace he ruled. How many people saw your drought and assumed that would be your destiny? How many withheld help not out of ignorance, but out of envy? Your dry season was never proof of abandonment. It was divine preparation. While they were assuming your life was finished, you were learning how to stretch little into legacy. You discovered how to carry humility with hunger, and now you'll carry abundance with integrity. Isaiah 55:12 declares, "You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands." Creation is already celebrating your comeback. And here's the irony. The people who once blocked your access are now blocked from your table, not because you shut the door, but because God assigned seats. Ask yourself, did they really think that season of starvation was your ending? Did they think someone with divine destiny could be broken by temporary lack? They forgot that hunger sharpens vision, that emptiness expands capacity, and now, as God floods your life with abundance, they'll have to watch you eat without needing to beg, boast, or explain. Your feast is loud, not because you're showing off, but because heaven is showcasing what happens when a chosen one refuses to quit. This is fulfillment with perspective. They thought the lack defined you, but now they see it refined you. Number 12. They tried to cancel a calling, but heaven doesn't honor their votes. Chosen one. They treated your purpose like it was a popularity contest, as if your calling could be deleted with a group chat, a whisper campaign, or an unfollow. But here's the truth. God's anointing doesn't need a vote. They didn't just try to discredit you, they tried to erase you, and in doing so they revealed how little they understood about what it means to be chosen. Because you weren't created for applause, you were sent for assignment. Jeremiah 1:5 makes it plain. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." You weren't just placed on this path, you were predestined for it. And that means no smear campaign, no gossip circle, no digital witch hunt can cancel what heaven has ordained. They moved like critics, not realizing you were on a mission, not a stage. They thought their silence would bury you. They thought pulling support would starve your momentum. But you don't run on support, you run on conviction. You don't need claps when you've been commissioned. Think about Jesus, betrayed, denied, crucified, and mocked. They tried to end him publicly, but resurrection shut them down permanently. Luke 24:6. Or Rosa Parks, just one quiet protester, cancelled by the system, only to become a defining symbol of civil rights. Or Simone Biles, criticized for stepping back for her mental health, only to return stronger and more respected. Or Malala Yousafzai, shot for speaking up, only to rise into a global voice for girls' education. They thought your silence was weakness, that ignoring you would make you irrelevant. But God was using that silence as a sacred workshop to rebuild your focus, deepen your identity, and mature your assignment. Romans 11:29 says, "For God's gifts and His call are irrevocable." That means no cancellation, no matter how hard they try. And now that your name is resurfacing in rooms they tried to keep you out of, they're scrambling. People are starting to ask questions. Wait, wasn't this the person you said would never make it? And here comes the divine reversal. They either lie again and dig deeper, or they confess they were wrong the whole time. Let me ask you, how many times did they try to discredit you behind closed doors? How many narratives did they spin to convince others you were finished? And now, how many of those same people are watching you rise with no explanation except divine favor? Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago." That means you were designed for this. You weren't invited. You were assigned. And assignment cannot be voted off the stage. They tried to paint your identity in failure. They wanted the world to see you through a distorted lens. But truth has a way of correcting the filter. And now, the contrast between the lie they told and the light you carry is too bold to ignore. So, chosen one, don't chase vindication. Just keep walking. Life already handed them the mic, and now karma is pressing record. Number 13. The same people who said you'd never make it now have to explain your rise out loud and in public. Chosen one, let this settle in your spirit. The very people who once paraded your name as a warning are now being forced to explain your success, not in whispers, not in group chats, not through vague apologies, but in the open, under the same spotlight they tried to dim. Isn't it something? The ones who gossiped about your downfall must now sit in the front row of your breakthrough, and the irony, you never needed to defend yourself. Your rise did it for you. They had already written the script for your life, hadn't they? They predicted you'd crumble under pressure, that your dreams were unrealistic, that your silence meant weakness, your confidence meant arrogance, your uniqueness meant failure. They didn't just doubt you, they promoted your defeat. They made your name synonymous with caution, not realizing they were sowing the seeds of a harvest they would later have to witness. But what they never expected is what God had planned behind the scenes. Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn." That verse wasn't about silencing your critics with retaliation. It was about allowing truth to rise so powerfully that it invalidates every lie they spoke, naturally, undeniably, and publicly. Look at Michael B. Jordan, once bullied in high school for carrying headshots and chasing an acting career, now a globally celebrated actor and director, or Steve Harvey, who was told by a teacher he'd never be on TV. That very man now owns the stage and gives others their spotlight. Or Les Brown, labeled educably mentally retarded as a child, who later became one of the greatest motivational speakers of our time. Or David, in 1 Samuel 17, mocked by his own brothers and dismissed by Saul, before taking down Goliath with a slingshot and shocking a nation. So let me ask you, how many people spoke as if they knew your end before they ever understood your calling? How many built credibility off claiming to see through you when in reality they were just projecting their own insecurity? They weren't offering insight. They were pushing a false narrative, crafted out of jealousy, fear, and the need to control what they couldn't comprehend. And now that the lie is collapsing in real time, they're scrambling for explanations. They're being asked questions like, "Didn't you say they wouldn't amount to anything? Weren't you the one who said they were fake, unstable, arrogant?" And suddenly, their confidence has turned to stuttering. 1 Peter 2:15 tells us, "For it is God's will that by doing good you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish people." That's exactly what's happening now. Your excellence, your grace, your consistency, it's exposing the gap between their narrative and your reality. And there's no spin clever enough to bridge that gap. They didn't see you as a threat because of your actions. They saw you as a threat because of your anointing. And now that anointing is blooming in front of everyone, they tried to warn about you. Rooms that were closed to you are now requesting your presence. Doors they tried to lock are being opened without them. You've become undeniable, not because you argued, but because you elevated. Proverbs 3:35 says, "The wise inherit honor, but fools get only shame." Their shame isn't from you, it's from their own exposure. The stories they sold no longer hold weight. The projections no longer match the proof. And that discomfort, that's karma, pulling back the curtain they once used to hide their motives. You didn't just survive their slander, you grew through it, you matured, you refined your gifts. And now, instead of screaming, "I told you so," you're walking silently into destiny while they nervously rehearse a new narrative they hope sounds less like hate and more like, "I was misunderstood." But the truth can't be softened. And karma doesn't ask for rehearsal. It presents the facts. You were once their favorite cautionary tale. Now you're their biggest contradiction. Romans 8:30 reminds us, "And those he predestined he also called. Those he called he also justified. Those he justified he also glorified." You were called, chosen, and now you're being glorified, not for your sake, but to glorify the God who wrote your story long before they ever tried to erase it. So, chosen one, what do you do now? You don't gloat. You don't even glance back. You keep rising. Let the ones who painted you as a failure scramble to explain how you became the standard. Because your success, that's not just a win. It's a divine interruption to every lie spoken in rooms you never entered, until now. Number 14. Karma doesn't knock. It kicks doors down, and it's here for divine exposure. Chosen one, let's make this clear. Karma doesn't tiptoe or whisper. It doesn't knock gently and wait to be acknowledged. It comes like a spiritual battering ram, kicking down doors that were bolted shut by denial, deception, and arrogance. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for confession. When karma arrives, it doesn't just reveal what was done. It exposes who did it and why. They thought their secrets were buried. They believed their betrayals would fade into silence. But what they forgot is that spiritual law doesn't forget. Galatians 6:7 echoes loud in this hour. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Karma doesn't just balance scales, it delivers truth with a vengeance. And for those who wronged you, it's arriving fully equipped. Not with vengeance, but with receipts. All the lies they told behind your back, they're resurfacing. The plots they crafted in the dark, being unrolled in daylight. The masks they wore to pretend innocence, shattering under the heat of accountability. But here's the twist. Karma isn't coming for blood. It's coming for clarity. It's not just exposing what they did to you. It's forcing them to see who they really are. And ask yourself, chosen one, what's more terrifying than being confronted not by your enemies but by your own reflection? That's what karma does. It holds up a mirror that cannot lie. James 1:23-24 says, anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and immediately forgets what he looks like. Karma makes sure they remember. It brings every projection back to its source. The energy they hurled at you is now being boomeranged straight into their lives. Just look at real-life examples like Bernie Madoff, who once enjoyed power and prestige, only to watch his empire fall under the weight of exposed deceit. Or Rachel Dolezal, who faked her identity and then had to face the world with the truth under blinding scrutiny. Or Bill Cosby, once protected by fame, now laid bare before the public in disgrace. Even Ananias and Sapphira in Acts 5:1-10, who tried to lie to the apostles and to God himself, faced instant judgment because the divine doesn't play with deception. Karma doesn't wait until they're ready. It shows up precisely when they least expect it. And when it does, it turns private guilt into public consequence. The silence they prayed for is interrupted by truth, thundering like justice from heaven. What they tried to hide is now trending. What they whispered about you is now being shouted, not in slander, but in reversal. Here's the irony. They thought they were spectators, that they could throw stones and walk away. But karma doesn't play with cowards. It makes them participants in their own exposure. Romans 2:16 promises, God will judge men's secrets through Jesus Christ, not out of cruelty but correction, not out of spite but sanctification. Even this reckoning serves a purpose greater than pain. It's about awakening. And while they're facing this reality, what about you? What have you become, chosen one? Stronger, wiser, clearer. You're no longer reactive, you're reflective. The betrayals refined you, the rejection re-centered you, and now your elevation isn't just happening, it's being broadcast. So let me ask you, can you feel the shift? The divine vindication that doesn't require clapping back, because truth is clapping loud enough for the whole room. You've witnessed karma not just as a reaction, but as a referee, a revealer, and a righteous flame. It's confronting your enemies in rooms you never entered. It's closing chapters you didn't have to rewrite. It's forcing those who weaponized your silence to listen to the echo of your victory, reverberating through every wall they tried to build against you. But this story is about more than their fall. It's about your transformation. Romans 8:18 assures you, "I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." You didn't just survive the storm. You became the atmosphere. Your strength was not built in comfort, but in the fire they tried to use to destroy you. And now, like gold, you shine, not in arrogance, but in resilience. You are no longer just a survivor. You are evidence. You are the living contradiction to their lies, the walking answer to every question they tried to raise about your value. Their attempts to cancel you became the classroom for your calling. Their drama became the background music to your breakthrough. And as karma does its perfect work, remember this: God's justice doesn't rush, but it never misses. Ecclesiastes 3:17 says, "God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed." That time is now. So let them squirm. Let them search for new narratives. Let them face what they spent years avoiding. Because you don't need to defend yourself. You were never the villain. You were the vessel, the chosen, the proof that what was meant to break you became the bridge to your greatness. Karma doesn't just knock, it kicks down doors, and it never leaves the scene without revealing exactly why it came. And this time, it didn't just come to repay. It came to remind the world you were never to be underestimated. Beloved chosen ones, if this message touched something deep in your spirit, if it stirred your heart, confirmed your journey, or even made you sit a little straighter because it spoke directly to your experience, then don't let it stop with you. You are not the only one walking through this divine process. There are others, maybe people close to you, maybe total strangers, who are silently enduring what you've already overcome, and they need to hear this. So share it. Be the bridge between someone else's breaking point and their breakthrough. We are not just survivors, we are messengers. Every time we pass the light forward, we push back the shadows in someone else's life. I want to take a moment to thank you from the depths of my heart for being here. Whether you've been part of this journey since the beginning or you just found this message today, your presence means more than you know. Your attention, your time, your energy, it all matters. You showed up, and that alone is a sign that you are aligning with your purpose. There are millions of distractions in the world, but you chose to feed your spirit today. And that's powerful, that's sacred. If you feel led to support what I do and help these messages reach even further, you can do so through the Super Thanks feature. But hear me clearly, even if you don't give, I'm still deeply, truly grateful for you. Your presence alone is a gift. Your engagement, your willingness to receive, your openness to transformation, these are offerings in themselves. I'm not here to demand anything from you. I'm here to serve, to deliver truth, and to help you recognize just how chosen, how equipped, and how powerful you already are. And if you do decide to give, know that it goes directly into expanding this mission, to reach more people who need it in more places, with even greater impact. This message wasn't just about karma, it was about confirmation. It was about that inner knowing you've carried for so long, the one that told you you weren't crazy, you weren't too sensitive, you weren't imagining things. You were discerning, you were awake. You saw what others refused to see, and you held your ground when everything inside you screamed to break. But you didn't break. You bent, you grew, you adjusted. And now, you're rising. Not in spite of what they did to you, but because of how you responded to it. You chose silence over spectacle. You chose healing over retaliation. You chose to move in wisdom rather than warfare. And now the universe, heaven, divine justice, whatever name you give it, is moving in your favor. What once felt unfair is now becoming unforgettable. What once looked like defeat is now transforming into your most defining moment. I want to bless you before we end. May every room they tried to lock you out of be opened by divine favor. May every lie spoken against you collapse under the weight of your truth. May every delay prove to be protection. May your name be mentioned in places of power, not because you fought to be seen, but because your presence is too purposeful to ignore. May your peace multiply, your clarity sharpen, and your strength be renewed daily. Isaiah 60:22 says, "When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen." That time is now. This isn't just your comeback. This is your confirmation. You are no longer in the shadows. You are in the season of reveal. The people who once dismissed you are now having to make room for you, not because you demanded it, but because God designed it. So stay grounded, stay humble, stay obedient to your calling. Let your success speak. Let your peace roar louder than their slander ever did. Let your growth continue to confuse those who thought you were finished. And most importantly, let your story be a testimony for someone else who's still in the trenches, wondering if they'll ever rise again. You are living proof that patience pays off, that integrity matters, and that truth always, always returns with power. If this message hit home, if you feel aligned and activated by what you heard, drop a comment and let me know. Declare it over your own life. Say something like, "It's my time," or "I'm walking in divine justice," or simply, "Karma is working." Not for applause, but for agreement. When you speak it, you activate it. And when you activate it, you step into a level of power that no enemy, no rumor, no rejection can ever undo. Keep walking in light. Keep protecting your peace. And remember, you were never fighting for revenge. You were being positioned for revelation. And now, the revelation is here. Karma didn't just arrive, it kicked the door down. And now, the whole world is watching what God is doing with your name. Stay powerful, stay focused, and above all else, stay blessed. Your rise is not just personal, it's prophetic, and nothing can stop what heaven already started in you.